Hi everybody, how's everybody doing today? Thanks for joining me today on my Thursday live stream. I'm kind of starting a little bit early and a little late at the same time. I meant to start at 4 o'clock, but I was outside testing the Panasonic S5 a little bit, uh, trying to trying to do a pseudo review on that camera. I mean, just for the sake of you guys to see how much difference there is between, say the S5 and the M1 Mark III. Because right now they're priced pretty similarly. The S5 is still a little bit more with the kit lens than the M1 Mark III with the 12 to 40 Pro. Uh, but ultimately it's not going to be that much different. But we'll see. I'm doing some different kinds of testing. Man, it's so cold. I'll try and finish that by tomorrow. Just need to do some video testing and then that'll be it. Nothing too complicated, right? But anyhow, let's see who's here. I'm sorry I started kind of late today. It, everything was disconnected when I came into the room, and I was like, "Oh crap! It's already 4 o'clock," So I had to hook everything up and get it working. But I think I got sound and video and everything good to go. But hi, Thomas. How are you? Yeah, 2 dislikes before we even start, right? I guess they didn't like the time that it starts. I don't know. And let's see, Seraphin's here. Yeah, I don't know who dislikes me. I don't know. It's okay. Whether I get likes or dislikes, it doesn't really matter. The more likes I get, the more it makes me feel better. But uh, I'm always gonna get dislikes. Like I said, if the whole world likes you, the not gonna be a very interesting place, right? You gotta have sort of that likes and dislikes in the everything. Let's see. Yeah, Tony and Chelsea each, right? Or it could be Peter and Robin. I bet it's those guys. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. John follows. Good to see you. Randy. Randy, you changed your username again. I kind of liked it when you had your website up there as your username. And I could refer people to it easily just to look at your username. John follows. Like that's me, Marcel. Good to see you. Danny. Ah, Danny Drake. That's a new name. I don't recognize that. Welcome to the stream. Maybe you've come and never commented before, but I don't recognize that one. And Plato's here. Casper, good to see you. Um, John Yutze. All right, good group here. Marco, Rob, if I want to send you a note, what's the best way to contact you? Oh, just email me. It's very simple, rob@robtrek.com. You can email me, or you can just, if you want it more public, you can leave a note on my forum at robtrek.com/forum. That's that's, the, but either way, I respond usually within 24 hours. I do the best I can. Um, It says here, Eric Berman is asking, how many shutter counts on an EM1 Mark III is Olympus promising before it's considered ready for retirement? I think the shutter's rated for 400,000, if I recall correctly, on the M1 Mark III. I might be confusing that with the M1X. And I think the M1 Mark II was like 200,000. So either way, a long time, long time. I think Jimmy Chang said he has well over 200,000 clicks on his EM1 Mark II, and it's still running strong. I might be up to 10,000, maybe. I mean, it's hard to tell because I'm confused whether electronic shutter counts are counted in that count or not, or if they're counted separately. I never really look. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. And Casper is confirming, yes, 400,000. But those numbers are all arbitrary. I mean, I don't know what kind of testing they do to make that kind of claim. Uh, 400,000 on Olympus might be, a million clicks on another brand or vice versa, right? It's always kind of just a mystery number to me. I think The reliability of Olympus is really solid though. You know, you really don't hear people say don't buy Olympus because it's going to break down on you. Most of the time what you hear is the best camera, the most durable camera I ever owned. I can say the same because all of my Olympus cameras have been excellent, even though I've dropped them many times. My EM10 Mark II is finally starting to get kind of glitchy, but I've had that camera over 4 years now. It's been dropped many, many times. And my EM5 Mark III has been to warranty twice. Um, within the same within a couple of weeks, because I sent it out for one problem, they sent it back to me with a new problem. So I sent it back to them. They finally fixed it, and I used it today with no problems. I took it out on a photo walk the other day and used it for a couple hours. So I think they fixed it. But I'm so happy to have my M5 Mark III back in action. Uh, really, I just love how small and lightweight it is. You know, having all of the tech in it from the M1 Mark II, basically. So excellent image stabilization, excellent autofocus. You know, the whole 9 yards. I much prefer carrying that rather than the EM1 Mark III, and certainly more than any full frame camera with their lenses. Yeah, and yeah, like Casper's saying, he got the EM1. That's the Mark I. That's at least 8 years old, that camera. And I'm using a camera that's from 2010, I think, or 2000. I don't know. The E500 that came out like in 2005 or 2006, and it's still working great. Now, I don't know how many shutter counts are on anything like that, but it's yeah. Olympus is, I think unquestionably, or there's no doubt about the reliability and durability of the Olympus cameras. And Eric says, I saw Tony N went down over the new Olympus. He didn't like it. Disliking Olympus gear is a natural. Yeah. Oh, hey, Bob. How are you? Good to see you. Um, I did watch that. I watched a few videos today to catch up on some news, photo news. Uh, so I watched Tony and I watched the Fro, Photo News Fix, and maybe one or two other things. But I never liked the way Tony compares lenses. He had a chart up where I should just pull it up. Let's talk about this for a second. Because this is where I always have a problem with Tony's comparisons when he's comparing against Micro Four Thirds. I mean, I don't think he's trying to be critical of Micro Four Thirds. He's trying to help people make a decision based on the metrics that he's using. But I don't think those are fair comparisons, in my opinion. Sure. History, real quick. My history today. I watched two of my own videos because people had questions, and I love the critical drinker. If you guys haven't seen the critical drinker, he's great. He does critical reviews of movies, and he just destroys them. Let's see. Mark Denny bought a van. That's kind of cool. And Sony, is this the video? Oh, here it is. This one, right? Let's Hey. All right. So here's the first comparison, right? Where he's comparing things by price, which he's saying you can buy Sony A7R4 with a 200 to 600 lens, which is an f6.3 to f11. I don't know. He's blocking it here with the stupid gimbal. Why? Why, Tony? Why? Anyway, 6.1 pounds. So he's comparing weight, I guess total weight and everything too. How come I'm not in the picture here? uh, and then he's comparing a Canon R5 with the 100 to 500 f7.1. And then he's tacking on the teleconverter. Then he's comparing this against the 150 to 400. He's saying this is $9,000. But what you can see here is he doubled the f-stops, which I think in wildlife and sports photography, that's not a valid application of doubling the f-stop on the aperture. Because in wildlife and sports, you want a fast shutter speed. So I think the 150 to 400 is an f4.5 constant, all the way out to the 800 millimeter equivalent. Whereas if you look at the Canon, it's at f11 when you're at 750 millimeters, which would be, close enough, right? That's a full, let's see, there's about 2/3, 1 2/3, I mean, almost 3 stops difference between the Olympus and the Canon lens at the long end, right? Uh, I mean, that's not a small thing. 3 stops, if you convert that back to shutter speed, the Canon, you might be stuck at 1/400th of a second, but on the Olympus, you could be at 800, 1/1600th of a second. No, that's only 2. So 400 to 800 to 16, you could be, say, at 1/3000th of a second at the same focal length, roughly, versus 1/400th of a second. So if you're taking pictures of birds, that's a huge difference with the Olympus camera. So I think for sports action wildlife, you need to consider the shutter speed you can acquire with an Olympus camera versus a Canon or Sony in this case, because the Sony is at f11 at 1000 millimeters, and the Olympus will be at f5.6. So again, that's what, f8 to f, that's 2 stops difference on the long end at 1000 millimeters. So we're talking again, if you're at, say, 1/200th of a second on the Sony, you can be at 400, 1/800th of a second on the Olympus at the same focal length. Uh, so that to me, if you're doing sports action wildlife, the Olympus has a huge advantage in shutter speeds that you can take pictures with. Uh, so that's the problem with this. And I think he went on to say that he was going to, you know, he was going to, he's telling people, don't buy this lens, buy the Sony or Canon system with a new body and everything instead of buying this lens. Now, that that may not be bad advice, right? Because that's an expensive frickin' lens at $7,500. You can buy a whole other system with the lenses for the price of that one lens. I'm not going to argue with him on that point too much, but I will argue with him about the aperture, doubling the aperture, and saying that the other camera systems will be better for sports wildlife. And I'm thinking sports wildlife guys would really love a very fast shutter speed. You know, I mean, think about in sports, if you're taking pictures of of people running or baseball where you're swinging the bat and all that stuff that you need a very fast shutter speed. Olympus is going to kill it compared to those other two. So that was my biggest problem with Tony's thing. So let me. So that was an editorial on Tony Northrup's videos. So I don't want any copyright crap going on. That's just purely an editorial. Uh, and like I said, I don't think his argument for switching system is invalid. That is something to strongly consider. If you're going to drop $9,000, you can look at a lot of different systems if you want to switch. So I'll give him that. Let's see. Yeah, he got, yeah. So let me see what you guys were saying while I was jibber jabbering. I'm going to back up a little bit. EM1 Mark 1 came out in 2014. Okay, so 6 years. Sorry. I thought it was older than that. Because I bought my Sony NEX6, I thought, in 2013, and I was looking at an EM1 Mark 1. And I was comparing it against that. I thought for sure I was. Randy says he was disappointed with the X firmware, really wanted astro focusing and some super simple control panels. Yeah, that would have been nice. On the Olympus, Plato says, on the Olympus UK channel, I saw a guy take a great macro shots with the M5 III and a 30 macro lens for light. He used his phone. Yep. The only challenge with, using a light from your phone, assuming it's enough light, right? Let's just assume that it's enough, because they're not very bright. But let's say you have just enough light to get a shot. The quality of the light coming out of an LED on a phone is pretty poor. So your colors might be slightly off. Even if you do white balance and all of that correctly, probably not enough that most people wouldn't even notice. But just keep in mind the quality of light can make a big difference in the photos. That's why like true video constant LED lighting is very expensive compared to you can buy LED work lights from your local hardware store for a fraction of the cost, right? If you want to buy an LED light for video, it's like 3-4 times the cost. And that's because there's a lot of, I guess they use much higher quality LEDs for more consistent, or has a higher CRI index, CRI. I don't know what that stands for, color rating index, maybe. Tony's chart made little sense, yeah. I mean, I totally get what he's saying. If you want to double the aperture numbers like that, it's valid for calculating depth of field when you need the same field of view, right? So 25 millimeter, 50 millimeters on on an MFT versus 50 millimeters on a full frame, you have a different field of view, but the aperture needs to stay the same for exposure. But if you have a 25 millimeter on the micro four thirds, say at f5.6, you only need like an f2.8 on the 50 millimeter full frame to get the same depth of field with the same field of view. I need to do a video on that. I mean, Tony did a pretty good video on that already. But I need to do one for you guys. Just explain it the way I would explain it but he did a good job. You can watch Tony's video on that about crop factor and all that. It's pretty decent. And then there's a follow-up video that he did where, people were trying to correct him on a lot of things. And in all fairness, he was pretty thorough, but he really did gloss over a couple of points that people were trying to hammer him on. And I mean, he knows better. And his angle, I think, is really geared towards people that don't quite understand aperture and crop factor. And he's trying to educate them in a way that is slanted towards getting a shallower depth of field. And that's kind of the area that he kind of glossed over a little bit in how the cameras work, depth of field, how that works. So I need to do a little better video that makes it a little clearer, I think. And of course, that opens up a can of worms though, because everybody has their hardcore, like, you'll never change their mind about full frame has shallower depth of field than micro four thirds. And it's just simple physics and math, right? Depth of field is affected only by distance and focal length and aperture, right? It has nothing to do with the sensor size itself. So if you put the same focal length, aperture, and distance, distance of the subject from both cameras that are using the same aperture, you're going to get the same depth of field. What changes, though, from crop factor to full frame is the field of view, not the depth of field. So that's what I need to kind of explain in a way. I'm not explaining it too well now, but that's where I'm going to go with that one day, one of these days. And Randy says, finally got my ND filters. And everybody, Randy, it's rsdumphy photography.com. He has a website, has excellent photography using the EM1X or all the Micro Four, Olympus cameras. And he's got the top-notch glass, right? Like the 300 millimeter f4, the 40 to 150 Pro, all the good glass. I'm very envious of him. I don't have any of that good stuff. Yeah, you're going to try and do the wind chimes with an ND32 is not enough due to the bright light out. Yeah. What I do is I stack like a 10-stop ND filter on top of my variable ND filter. So I would use both if you can. Oh, hi David. How are you, John? John. Oh, uh, Tony rates lenses based on his sales commission. The bigger, the better. No, I think honestly, I think he tries to be fair. I just don't agree with his. I don't know how to say it, but I don't agree with his points, that he makes about one camera versus another camera. The points may be valid, but I don't think that's where you should be making your buying decision. Kind of points that he brings up. If someone were to ask me what camera should you buy, I'm going to give very different reasons than he will. So I think that's the best way to explain it. It's not that his opinions are wrong or you know, he's not lying or anything. He's not giving you bad advice. He's just giving you very different point of view on the same systems. And he's sort of abandoned talking about micro four thirds. Now I'm sure it's just purely a business decision, on his part. His channel is very driven by business and views and likes and everything, right? Which God bless him, that's great. Uh, and still trying to be honest and fair in the advice he gives, but there's just a slight conflict there. Uh, Maybe not. I don't know. I'm overthinking it. Tony has a great channel, but like I said, I would give very different reasons and opinions on certain things than he would. Yeah, f-stop is the same no matter what the format. Yeah. And then John Yutze says, can't remember who, but one of our regulars on Jimmy's stream this week said the 150 to 400 was the ultimate wedding lens. Oh yeah, I saw that. I watched Jimmy's stream this morning too. I missed it yesterday because I was out. Where was I yesterday? Why wasn't I home? Oh, I went out with a friend of mine. That's right. We had lunch. Look at the number of thumbs down. Yeah, he's got a lot of haters. Only quotes the f-stop because it's the equivalent depth of field, not on its light gather. Yes. Yeah, he quotes it based on depth of field, which at 400 or 800, whatever millimeters, depth of field is almost irrelevant, because it's gonna be shallow at those huge focal lengths anyway. I mean, it depends how far away the subject. I mean, there's a lot of subjects, a lot of things that go into making the image and getting depth of field, shallow or deep, right? Yeah, I'm with you, Randy. I thought that lens, the 150 to 400, would be closer to 5,000 than 8,000, but uh, yeah, that's a bit steep. I didn't like that comment he made that thinks Olympus is trying to rip us off. Every company needs to make money. You know, he's comparing the slower full frame lenses with similar focal lengths to a very fast Olympus lens. And you can't do that. Can't. You got to compare similar aperture lenses, similar focal lengths. Like Nikon has a 300 millimeter, it's an f4, and Olympus has a 300 millimeter f4. And those two lenses are comparably priced, if I recall correctly. Let me just look it up real quick. Nikon 300 millimeter. Okay, so the Nikon 300 millimeter f4, not that old one of the newer ones, are all used. Okay, 1349, 1479,000, one with VR in it. Okay, so it's $2,000, right? This is the one I'm talking about. I don't know what these are fake prices. This is a $2,000 lens, right? 300 millimeter f4 with image stabilization or VR like they have it. And then if you go to change this to Olympus, right? Where are we? Here's one. Here's one. 3,000. How come? Here it is. 1,079 is $750 more. It didn't used to be. This used to be a $2,000 lens, but the price has gone up. That's got to be used or something. They used to be very comparably priced though, but price has gone up since I last looked at it. Wow. Because I remember I went to an event last year in October to the camera store, and I could have bought this lens for $2,000. I was thinking, man, I should get this because it was like $100 or $200 off. I could have got it for $2,000. I was this close. I was this close, but I said, oh, I just can't. I can't do it, you know? Uh, but anyway, that's how you compare lenses, right? You're going to compare them for focal length and speed. And then whatever camera you put it onto, you put it on a crop camera, you'll get an equivalent focal length a little longer. You put it on a full frame, you'll get less, yada yada. It's just it's just how it is. Tony. Seraphin says his hatred for M43 drove me away long time ago. Channel stopped being level-headed and fun a long time ago. Yeah, well, like I said, he did stop talking about M43 and preaching its demise years ago, right? Uh, which, it's still going strong to this day, in my opinion. Uh, even though Olympus sold to JIP, they'd have held on to it, still be going, they're still going strong, in my opinion. We'll see what JIP does. And then John Yutze says, I'm not buying the 150 to 400 because it's white. Doesn't fit my camera color scheme. I know that is kind of an odd choice, right? Going with white. There's got to be some reason for that, though. Oh, SL7293 has a good point here. He says, I think Tony's argument is that you can get fast shutter speeds by upping the ISO on full frame and getting the equivalent in image quality at lower ISO of Micro Four Thirds. Um, in low light, yes. If you're working in lower light conditions, then full frame is going to give you an edge on the ISO. But if you're working in good light, generally speaking, that's when the two lenses, I don't think that was a fair comparison. But as you get lower in light, towards, you know, towards sunset, like an hour or two within sunset where the sun is low in the sky, and your ISOs or your shutter speeds and ISOs have to start, or your shutter speeds start to drop, you can crank the ISO on a full frame camera and still get cleaner results than you would with a Micro Four Thirds, all things being equal. But again, we're talking 2 to 3 stops difference between the two cameras. That's a huge difference. But that is a valid point, yes. And then Thomas Zizauskas is asking, does f-stop change the actual price by 2 stops as well? Tony's $9,000, he was adding the price of the camera body to the lens. So he was rounding out a $1,500 for the M1 Mark III plus $7,500 for the 150 to 400 when he actually should have said $1,400, right? Because right now it's on sale for $1,399. I don't know what prices he used, but that's how he came up to 9,000. So I assume the other two prices that he had listed there for the Sony and the Canon were, rounded out too. So it was a fair, in terms of pricing, I don't think it was too deceiving, but I think in terms of the lenses he chose, because if he chose the Olympus 100 to 400 lens, which is $1,500, and you combine that with the M1 Mark III, which is $1,500 based on his pricing, that's $3,000 for an equivalent lens that we were putting on the full frames. Now we're talking about half the cost. That's the price point. Those are the prices he should have been comparing, not the 150 to 400, because he did show the 150 to 400 comparison lenses, because the Canon version was like $12,000, right? Yeah, I mean and then when he goes to this other chart, he flips back to these other lenses, which that that's a little bit that's not a choice I would have made. Let's just say that. I was on the photo edit session Tuesday. Live streams aren't ideal times for me, work and family, so I've been burning through the past recorded. Love everything about your channel. Oh, thank you, Danny. I appreciate that. Uh, music song or working late tonight? Okay, Trevor. Oh, hey, Trevor. Aaron, do it. That would be great to see. I forget what I was talking about now. Must have been about the aperture, depth of field thing. I'll give that some thought. I'll have to organize that. Tony reminds you of a politician? Really? Shallow depth of field seems to be the holy grail. Well, with the YouTube channels, yeah. But I think with most photographers, professionals, amateur alike, depth of field is not, it's a one-trick pony. Yeah, you can use it in a couple of shots, but you're generally you're a photographer, you're not trying to get that shallow depth of field. The clickbait master, yes, he does run a very good business on his YouTube channel, no question. No question. David Crook says clickbait master. And John Yutsei says Gerald Undone has a video on M43 depth of field, which I thought was pretty good, but maybe just a little bit too complicated for beginner series. Bet Rob can do better. Oh, thanks, John. I'll try. I'll try. The problem with Tony's argument that 200 ISO on the Olympus is equivalent to image quality is 800 on a full frame is that 800 is not a base ISO on the. Yeah, there's lots of issues SL7293 with these comparisons. I mean, I think ultimately we just got to look at the final image, right? And not try and extrapolate why things happen or why we calculate things this way. And I'm more pragmatic when it comes to image quality, right? It's kind of like if you really pixel peep, at ISO 200 on a micro four thirds against say ISO 100 on a full frame, you're going to see noise at ISO 200 even on a micro four thirds. But it's not so like egregious that you're going to be able to see it on a normal photo. You have to really pixel peep and look for it, and then be in those kind of situations that would, like where there's very high contrast, very low, very low light in some areas and shade. Even in bright sky, you can see noise on a micro four thirds. At least I have. One little click in the software and it's gone. You know what I mean? And it has no impact on the picture. So to me, it's practically just as good as, full frame at base ISO. Even though if you really pixel peep, yeah, you're going to see a difference. Like I can see a little difference between my Panasonic S5 and my Micro Four Thirds, each at their base ISOs. But you have to really pixel peep. It's like, let me unload. Oh, I can't do it. I just, let me show you guys. I was just out testing these two things side by side. Oh, I gotta take this off. This trigger thing didn't work. I ended up doing a custom timers, but I set up a Godox flash. So I did a couple portraits, I did a couple landscapes, and I did some face detect photos. I haven't even taken the memory cards out. I just walked in and started the stream because I was out doing this, and so I'm gonna see how they came out. Anyway, I forgot. I don't even know why I brought that out. Awesome, Casper. You got 100 follows on your macro page. That's great. I'm way behind on the chat. I'm sorry. Music Sound Gear says, just got on late, but if Tony Northrup were you're talking about, his gear tutorial really helped me when I got my M1 Mark II. Yes. Yeah, like I said, I think Tony's a good guy. Of course, Kelsey is awesome. I really don't have a problem with their channel. I just feel like the way he presents things very differently than I would and make recommendations very differently than I would. And of course, I don't have the luxury of buying a $12,000 lens, pairing it with Micro Four Thirds 300 millimeter f4, because he did do a comparison of the 300 millimeter f4 versus like this $12,000 lens. And he was getting better results with the $12,000 lens. But I don't know that that testing methodology that he used would be the same way I would do it and get this, because he took a picture of his bookshelf or something, and then when you look at it close, yeah, the $12,000 lens was sharper. And just it's not the testing methodology is different than I would do, and the logic that he uses to make recommendations is different. I think people that follow him and take those recommendations are doing just fine. You know, they're gonna go out and do exactly and shoot. You know, they're gonna be fine with whatever recommendations he makes. But I might make a different recommendation. I like to balance, you know, size, weight, ergonomics, you know, a lot of very subjective things, right? Versus necessarily hardcore technical specs. You know, it's like when he was saying Micro Four, you know, a couple of years ago he was talking about Micro Four Thirds is dead, and I made a short video. I made a video when taking pictures in the fall, like a photo walk, but I did talk about his video on that. And you know, the problem with his argument back then was that he was comparing entry level full frame cameras against, you know, full on Micro Four Thirds, you know, top of the line Micro Four Thirds cameras, and saying, why would you spend, you know, $2,000 on a Micro Four Thirds when you can get a full frame for $2,000? And then very quickly, he made a statement that it doesn't have the same features. You know, the Micro Four Third has more features, what he was implying, but he just said it doesn't have the same features. That right there sort of, you know, destroys the argument of comparing these two cameras. Because an entry-level full-frame camera doesn't have anywhere near the features Olympus had back then, 2 years ago, the M1 Mark II. Uh, you just could not compare the two cameras in terms of feature set. And even today, you really can't compare an entry-level full-frame camera to a top-end Micro Four Thirds in terms of feature set. You know, like I'm going to compare the Panasonic S5, which is Panasonic's current entry-level full-frame camera, against the M1 Mark III, which is still a tiny bit cheaper at the current prices than the S5, given, you know, the lenses you get with it. And there's no comparison in feature set. I mean, it's the EM1 Mark III has so many more features. Well, let me rephrase that. It has more features. I don't know how many more. It has more features than the baseline S5 for photography. For video, yeah, the S5 crushes it, and that's why I bought it. I bought it for the video side of it. But Panasonics have always kind of crushed Olympus on spec. So it's not because the S5 is full frame that it's crushing the M1 Mark III in video. It's because it's a Panasonic, you know. But anyhow, Plato says Gerald Undone talks too fast for me, English not being my first language. Oh, thanks for Rob Trick. Yeah, I get that a lot actually. A lot of people say that they like my pacing because English is not their first language and they can understand me better because I speak a little slower. I don't think it's just the pacing that I talk at, but a lot of times my organization of thought as I'm going down, I never script anything. You know, if you watch any of my videos, it's very never scripted. I just sit down like these live streams and just start to jibber jabber about the topic because I know it really well, generally speaking. If it's a long subject, I'll have notes so I can try to stay organized and not forget things. But generally speaking, I never script. Uh, So that's another reason I talk a little bit slow, because I have to think before it comes out of my mouth a little bit, right? And Bob says, his comparisons, I assume Tony's, are unfair and mislead those who do not realize what he is doing. Yeah, like I said, his recommendations are valid on a different level, right? Uh, and I think I wouldn't say it's misleading. It's just a different way to go and look at something. Just like he was looking at the 150 to 400 in that video, you know, by doubling the aperture, it's a different way to look at things. But it's not clear why he's doubling it in that video, right? And he still harps on, how full frame sensor gathers more light because it's a bigger sensor. So it's gathering more light, which is irrelevant to exposure or even image quality, right? It has to do with per pixel how much light gathering is there and the well depth and all of that stuff. Yeah, full frame is always better, but still it's not giving the full story. He's a little bit oversimplifying or glossing over topics that I think he needs to sort of explain a little better, and I think he really tried in another video where he talked about how the image stabilization does allow you to use much slower shutter speeds, keeping your ISOs low versus other camera systems, because the Olympus image stabilization is superior. And that's a valid point, but then you have to add on that, if you're going to be using slower shutter speeds, generally you want your subjects to be static and not moving like a rock building, You don't want motion in your shots. If you do want motion in your shots, that's fine because slower shutter speeds will give you that. But it's things like that where it's kind of a half story, right? Like he's telling you one thing that's very true and valid and that you should think about when you buy something, but he's not always telling you the other side. And sometimes it's hard. You can't just say everything in one video. Have to you have to hit on the points that you think are important for someone to make a buying decision. And that's what he's doing. But what he thinks is important, for me, I think, the other points there's sometimes points that I think are very important that he doesn't bring up that I would, and points that he brings up that I wouldn't bother bringing up. Like on a 150 to 400 lens, I would not bother bringing up the fact that you have to double the aperture to get the same depth of field. What is the freaking point of that, But he made it part of his decision-making process, right? That the micro four thirds, you have to double the aperture. To me, that is not a decision or critical decision point when buying that lens, worrying about getting an equivalent depth of field. That totally irrelevant, but that was the basis of his whole decision-making process when he was comparing the Canon and the Sony against the Olympus, which to me is totally invalid or not important at all. But anyway, uh, Randy says, got the 72, 16.5, 10, and 6-stop ND. Stacking do not work for me. This has long been struggle. Ah, I wouldn't stack multiple filters together. I'm a little confused what a 72, 16.5. ND filters are very confusing because they say this is ND 400, ND 32, 6-stop. It's like there's a logic to it and there's a math to it that I can't get into now because now I can't remember. Once I bought the ND filter, when I was buying it, I knew exactly how to compare all of them despite whatever metric they used. But after I bought it, it just goes away, right? Something else pushes it out. But I used to stack a 10-stop ND filter with a 5-stop ND variable ND filter. So I would get an effective 15 stops. I'm only stacking 2 filters. I do that. I would not stack multiple fixed ND filters together like you're talking about. That would be detrimental to image quality, I would assume. Maybe they'll discount it on Black Friday. Oh my God. They really should have made that lens about 5,000 or less. Then I think people would have, but it might be impossible. I don't know. I don't know what cost went into that lens. And Randy says it's a special lens for special use. I commend Olympus for making it. Yes, I agree. I think it's a great thing. Rob Trey, you should look at the Nikon 600 millimeter f4. No, I'm gonna sell my Nikon one day, or at least the lenses for it. I'm never gonna, you never say never, right? But I really have no desire to go back to full frame photography, with all the massive lenses that go with it. Like I said, the S5 was purely a video centric purchase for me, but photography wise, I have no desire to take that thing out, to be honest. Other than the novelty of shooting with full frame again and shooting with vintage glass, like my Nikon 105, I bought an adapter so I can put this on the S5. So with respect to maybe shooting with some vintage glass again, full frame lenses on a full frame camera, I'm a little excited about that, photographically speaking. For photo walks and general photography, yeah, I'm taking my EM5 Mark III, the smallest, lightest camera I have. I got my 300 for 2,000 on Winter Big eBay. Yes, good deal. In Germany, the price of the 300 has dropped down to 2,000 pounds. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Michael. Music Song Gear says, if you take the 14 to 42 kit lens and put the 15 MC22X adapter, you can have a lens with the same focal length, but it's a constant f400. What the heck are you talking about? I don't think you can put an MC20 on it on a kit lens. White is to keep it cool. Sure, why not? I mean, it's true, white does reflect light, the infrared, so it doesn't get hot, the infrared waves. Now it's getting way too technical for me. White, Morgan says, white keeps it from heating up and changing the lens elements alignment. I can see that. I guess if you're out in the sun all day. And then Brad Becker says, Rob, thanks for the recommendation to the narrowband channel. Dude knows his stuff. Yeah, that guy is something. He's smart. He knows his stuff about astrophotography. So everybody, the narrowband channel, if you're interested in astrophotography with your Olympus camera, that guy, I can't recommend it any higher than that guy. And then John Follows says the lens is white because it's anti-heat coating paint according to Robin Moore. Yes. And if it's that hot though, I ain't going to. Might, but again, that's not my lens, right? That's not a lens I would buy. I mean, I haven't even bought the 100 to 400, and I barely use the 75 to 300 kit lens I have. I'm just not a super telephoto bird's eye sports action photographer. I'm thinking about the 40 to 150 a lot though. Maybe get a 2x teleconverters for the once in a while I need the 300 millimeter focal length, but I'm debating that or just getting the 100 to 400. But it's not going to be as sharp as a 40 to 150. So I don't know. Or as fast, right? And your feet make a difference depth of field, yes. De Morgan says Olympus has a patent for f7 autofocus lens. Wow, crazy. Who would need such a lens? I mean, these weirdo lenses. I mean, well, I don't want to call them weird, but these lenses like the 150 to 400, and then if this 0.7 autofocus lens is going to come out, these are kind of extremes, right? They're not mainstream lenses. It's going to be just a handful of people that need something like. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I get that I get just for fun, but the problem with these kinds of lenses, they're too expensive to be for fun, right? You gotta drop some bucks on it, man. Not for me. Tony also says you can't learn photography on YouTube. I saw that thumbnail. I didn't watch it though. I should watch it, but I didn't watch that video. And Roberto Carlos Garcia says, I just got the Helios 44.6. Any recommendation for an adapter, M42 to M43? I just buy the cheapest ones. A Photo-C, photodiox. Um, you just have to, like I paid like, I think $19 for this one. This is a Photo-C. It's not the M43. I have an M43 up there, adapter. So it screws in, right? The screw mount. Um, you just have to, I have about 10 of these at least, adapters, different kinds. And one of them, the little screws in the front work themselves loose. So I just had to screw them back in and make them tighter. But that's like only one out of all, out of the 10 or so that I own. It happened to one. Now, if you buy an expensive Metabones type adapter, the $100 to $200 adapters, you probably will never run into that problem. But for me, I'm a $15, $20 guy all day long. But Photo-C, Photodiox, well, let me see which one I got. Without, jamming up my mic. Mine is the, this is a Neewer, N-E-E-W-E-R. They pronounce it newer. It's called a newer, but it's spelled Neewer. Uh, this one doesn't even have any screws on it. It looks like it's just a solid piece with the threads. Oh, the screws are on the side instead of being on the front. Because if you look at this, on this lens mount, the screws are in the front. On this one, they're along the side. But this one works fine. It's made by Neewer. Ah. Berto says, I got my first prime following Rob Trek tip the 45 f1.8. I'm so happy with it. Awesome. Difficult to use at home. Spanish homes are smaller. Yeah. Yeah, it's generally an outdoor lens. I don't use it indoors. And nice setup, Rob. What are we talking about? Bob Tishmar says one of his comparison videos was a joke. Pictures of books. Oh yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. He couldn't be bothered to get off his to go outside and take some proper photos that the lens is designed for. Yeah. That's why when I did my last, I'm going to try and do more lens tests that take pictures close and far away and sort of mid-range, particularly with zoom lenses. But, lenses behave differently at different focal lengths sometimes, what I found. Throughout the zoom range or even primes at different. Marjorie says, Aaron, I bought the 75 secondhand on eBay. I've not had a chance to 75 seems the most. Yeah, 75 is another kind of niche lens, right? Like I hardly ever use mine. Yeah, and Richard Jones makes a good point, right? It's like not a competition. If you enjoy shooting M43, don't let somebody try to change your mind. No, I have my M5 Mark III on my tripod over there, but it's bigger than this, right? This is my GX85. It just has a hump on it. Pop. I love Micro Four Thirds. You can just go everywhere with it, and it takes tremendously great pictures. When I'm going through my cameras in Lightroom and stuff, I have to double check which camera it was taken with because I can't tell just looking at it. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, this is my Nikon, this is the Fuji, this is my Olympus. It's like it's not obvious at first glance, right? You have to really look at the image, and then a very trained eye, somebody with a really trained eye, not me. I guarantee they can tell a difference between cameras by looking at the colors and the pixels and everything. I bet, I bet if you gave a very trained eye kind of person raw files from different cameras of the same image, they would nail it. Bang, bang, bang. You know what I mean? Because it gets to the point that I can tell sometimes, like when I see Sony colors, sometimes I can tell I have a hunch it's a Sony because I see the colors. I'm not always right, but time to time when I'm doing my photo editing live streams, I'll have a hunch, yeah, this is a Sony, you know? But that's about the extent of what I can tell. Other cameras is very hard for me to tell. Sometimes I can tell Nikon because the colors are a little warmer. But anyway, there's too many variables that go into a picture for somebody to really be able to tell you what camera and lens they use. Right? Anyway, yes, I love the 1.8 primes too. Trying to get caught up here. Randy says, I plan on using one ND filter with live ND to see what happens. I need about 2-second exposure to get the wind turbines. Okay. Yeah, because live ND is 5 stops, right? ND32, so it's 5 stops. And then you tack on another ND filter. Looks like you have 4 or 5 of them. You could get down to 2 seconds easy. Yeah, Ed, I agree. 5,000 would have been great for that lens. Marjorie says, I think people get so caught up in gear first, then photography second. Yeah. I mean, for me, early on, it was all about the gear. So I was about to drop $500 or $600 on a camera. to get. So when I bought my first interchangeable lens camera in 2012 or 20, yeah, I think it was 2012. Might have been 2013. Uh, I researched the heck out of them, and I ended up with a Sony NEX6. But the Olympus EM1 Mark I was on my short list, I remember. Now I'm a techie, nerdy kind of guy anyway. So all that stuff was a big part of my buying decision. And that on top of having a bad case of gas, I just gotta have it. Doesn't bode well for my wallet or my credit. But now I'm really trying to go out and really enjoy photography, art form, and be as a creative way, as a creative outlet, expression, and all of that good stuff. So that's why I enjoy shooting film now, just to try to create some sort of mood or emotion from the image. I've kind of grown into that. I did start very gear centric, and I was looking for cameras that would just take a good picture without any thought to composition or colors or anything like that. I just wanted to try to get the best image quality I could. So I was very focused on the gear. And now I've totally shifted in terms of using cameras. I always look for the best camera that I can. But when I use a camera, I'm not trying to get the very best image quality anymore, right? Get the best image I can, right? Means something to me or or I'm trying to evoke some great, express myself somehow. I don't know how to, I'm kind of getting I don't know. Anyway, I'm losing my, I'm not being very articulate here, but uh, and when I make recommendations to people on gear, it's never about the absolute technical specs of the camera. It's always about, everything else about the camera that makes it enjoyable to use. The DeMorgan says originally Olympus was going to loan the lens and cameras to pros at the Olympics like they did. Okay, the M1X, but JIP not. Ed says he loves his EM5 Mark III. Gets a lot more use than the EM1X. Yeah, I'm not going to get an EM1X. I'm just not a big camera kind of guy. I'm not going to be. I mean, I should get one as often as I drop cameras, but I'm not really planning on doing hardcore uh, environmental photography where I'm taking it out in the rainforest or places that it's going to get beat up in terms of weather. Of course, they're getting cheap enough now. It's like $2,000 now, isn't it? A heck of a camera. Maybe one day I'll get one just when it gets cheap enough, right? And I got some extra money I need to burn. I shoot in the desert at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Never had a problem. Black equipment. Yeah. Narrowband channel recommends a filter that clips over the sensor. Would you consider this a safe thing to do? Um, I'd have to see how it clips in. I've seen that clip filter thing that goes in. It would make me personally a little nervous, but I think there's really a problem with doing it. But I would consider it. That's the question. Would I consider it? Yes, I would consider it safe. Um, but I don't know. I don't have one. I can't tell you from experience if it's safe or not. It looks okay. Yes. Bob makes a point. The 150 to 400 Pro is not made price for the amateur. Pro who makes money for his photos will pay what it costs to get it done. And from a few reviews I've seen, they've already ordered it. Absolutely. Like I said, it's a specialty lens. And then, for at least here in the US, when you buy something like that for work, you can write off the cost off your taxes. So you're paying roughly half the price right there. One point of the new 100 to 400 is making it work in combo with the M4 Sports Wildlife Pros. Then the idea that pros use the system to sell the downline camera. Yes, that is definitely one way to get people into the system, to the Olympus system. That. Oh, you meant the 150 to 400. Okay, same deal, same thing. I mean, everything they make is designed to drive more business ultimately. They're not going to make a camera to lose money, making cameras to drive more business. Okay, we'll see you on Sunday, Roberto. Thanks for coming in. I got a few minutes to my next stream. Chelsea secretly loves Olympus and sneaks out with her EM1. Yeah, me and her, we go sneaking out. We cheat on Tony with our Olympuses, me and Chelsea, so you know. Marcel Van Cotham says, hello, everyone. I have to leave. Oh, okay. We'll see you later. 10 minutes to the next stream. Thank you. 11 minutes. Yes. I just want to catch up on the chat. I'll move on here. Looking forward to seeing your edit, Marcel. Awesome. If I buy it, then you'll send me 50% of the cost. That's funny. Uh, very animated stream. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Yeah, I had fun today. I just walked in from outside, so my fingers and face were still cold. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe I need to do that before every stream. Now that it's winter, you just go outside for about 30 minutes and freeze to death and then come in and I'll be good. Oh, it's okay, Randy. It's a tough shot today. I gave everybody a sunset shot today to edit. It's hard. I had a hard time with it. And DeMorgan's asking, why did they bring the EM10S to the US now? I don't know. I never even heard of an EM10S. EM10 Mark III S. They have an EM10 Mark III S. Okay, I'm going to look that up and then go to my next stream. HN10 23. Where are you guys getting information about an EM10S? Huh. Okay. Oh, when it gets more mainstream news-wise, I'll look into it, but I haven't even heard of it. other than when you guys mention it here in the stream. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining me today on another live stream for Thursday. I had a great time as always. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and spending it with me. It's always been a treat, pleasure, and we'll catch you guys on Sunday. And I'm going to my photo editing stream now, so you can join us there if you like. But otherwise, hopefully we'll see you again soon.